Will the 49ers take a wide receiver with their first pick? The context being, I think most people feel that their offense is up next for the Niners. They've made a lot of defense investments, and on offense, they're kind of weak at offensive line, and they have some wide receivers who might be on the trade block. So it could go either way. Which way would you go? Wide receiver or O-line? Or running? I don't know.
If we're looking at the first pick, I would probably go. Actually, really, with the first pick, I wouldn't go with wide receiver unless they trade up. I don't think there's going to be a receiver worth it at 61.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'd have to trade up to get a guy that they really like at there, and even that doesn't really make sense unless they decide that they're not going to redo anything with Deebo Samuel, or they feel like they're going to eventually move off of Brandon Ayuk because their top three guys are pretty strong. So I don't know if you want to invest your first pick in the draft and at 61 on a guy who's going to be your number 4 on your depth chart.
Right. So you would think they would go offensive line here or just defense again?
I think there's a really good chance that they go safety here. Just looking at their team and the fact that they have, at the safety position, Jimmy Ward, he's in the last year of his contract, and we haven't heard anything about a new deal for him. Yeah. And outside of that, I don't really know where else. In terms of their safety room, I think the only guy who signed past this year is Talanoa Hufanga.
That's true. I do think a safety would be a good pick, but I have a feeling they're not going to do it. And I don't know. Why do I have that feeling? Because they don't like drafting DBs that high. I don't know why. And they really like Talanoa for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. And could they draft a year ahead of, predicting that Jimmy Ward's going to go? Yeah, but I think they also feel that defensive players are kind of plug and play, that they could address that next year. I'm not saying it's a bad pick. It would be a great pick at safety. I just have a feeling that they're going to take a wide receiver here. I don't know why. They took 3 DBs last year. They doubled up at running back last year, and they took 2 offensive linemen last year. So they could justify not taking any of those spots here. You know what I mean? If they take a guard here, everyone's going to be like, oh, what does that mean about Aaron Banks? And they're not the kind of team that likes to be like, well, we were wrong about that player without even giving him a chance. They didn't take any wide receivers last year. They took 2 in 2020, Ayuk and Jawan Jennings. Mm-hmm. I have a feeling that they're looking for a sort of a new offense, a slightly new passing game with Trey Lance, considering his shot chart, his throwing chart is going to be a lot different where he wants to throw. And plus, the skill sets of the receivers that are required to play with him are different too. All of a sudden, target size matters. Hand-eye coordination matters. Like, if you drop a lot of passes, you probably can't play with Trey Lance. So anyway, the fact that the Niners didn't take any wide receivers last year, the fact that they doubled up on running back, offensive line, and took 3 DBs last year, I think they're going to double up in wide receiver in this draft. They have 9 picks. I think they're going to take 2 wide receivers. And I wouldn't be surprised it depends on who's available. But for example, wide receiver out of Boise State, I've been watching him a little bit this morning, Khalil Shakir. He's a gadget guy. I don't know how much you've watched him, but he's kind of a good after the catch, can line up in the slot, ran a 4.33, really explosive, a little bit like Christian Kirk. If he's available in the late second round, I could see the Niners taking him because 1, they do put Deebo at running back a fair amount, and 2, if Ayuk has if they pay Deebo and Ayuk has a good season, they may not be able to pay Ayuk. Like, they may need to pick one or the other if wide receivers are really going for $30 million a year. So that's why I'm thinking it's in play.
Yeah, but that also brings up the fact that when you're talking about Brandon Ayuk, that's one of the nice parts about him is that although he's going into year 3, they still have 2 more years of control because they can use the 5th-year option on him since they got him in the first round. So they can kind of extend out that discussion with him a little bit longer.
Hold on. Isn't that 5th-year option getting kind of expensive for wide receivers?
Yeah, it would be expensive because you're starting to look at what is it, the average of like the top 10 at the position or something like that. So yeah, it'd be expensive. It'd be expensive, but
if Christian Kirk is getting big money on the, I'm just saying they might want to trade Ayuk. If they're saying, look, the 5th-year option's expensive, the extension's expensive, but wide receivers bring back a lot in trades. We could get a 1st and a 2nd for Brandon Ayuk when we got him in the late 1st. Then it'd be good to have someone that you have waiting in the wings. And it seems like wide receiver is such an important position, such a valuable position, and it takes a little bit of time to learn the offense and adjust, that you should probably be drafting. Anyway, they're going to take it. We both agree they're going to take wide receivers. They could wait until round 3. But if there's a guy they really like in round 2, I don't think Kyle could resist. He loves wide receivers.
He does. He really does. Uh, yeah. So we'll see.
He
We'll
does.
see what the direction they go there. I think the other thing to think about too is, you talked about Deebo Samuel in the backfield, and we've heard them. We've heard some really big names in terms of running backs attached to them as well. Guys who you
Yeah.
would expect to see going
Ryan
in day
Robinson.
two. Well,
Yeah.
there's Robinson. Another one is Jerome Ford out
Ford.
of Cincinnati. I think
Yeah.
that's the guy that if I'm looking at him, I think Jerome Ford is the better of the two. He's a big dude, also 5'11", 220. Um, put up big numbers last year for Cincinnati, but he's a former Alabama guy too. He actually started out at Bama before transferring to Cincinnati. So you've got two former Bama guys that they're interested in there. And Ford's a pretty good receiver. Projects more as a short yardage back in the NFL though.
If they take a running, they could take a running back in round 2. But if they take a running back in round 2 or round 3, it basically says we were wrong about Trey Sermon. Sorry, he sucks. I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't know if they feel that way. All I know is that this wide receiver spot, it seems like, again, I think they're trying to find guys who are Trey Lance specific. And they brought in a couple of deep threats. But for example, he's going to be throwing, we saw this in training camp. He's going to throw a lot of passes toward the sideline. And when he misses high. So what the Niners are going to want is someone who can make acrobatic catches near the sideline. I mean, someone who's about 6'3", maybe someone with long arms, someone with really, really good hand-eye coordination.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that's not Khalil Shakir at all. That's another like Deebo Samuel type, really short arms, really good after the catch. There was a guy at the pro day. I don't know if you know this guy, but the best player at the Niners local pro day was Mekhi Polk. Okay. He went to Cal for a couple of years, transferred to Mississippi State with Mike Leach, had a big year. Who doesn't have a big year? But anyway, he's 6'3". He's from Richmond. He's not fast. He's not explosive. He's a lot like Juwan Jennings. He ran a 4.59. He had like a 32, but he's really tall. He showed up to the local pro day. And when you read his thing, he's like known for his hands. And he's actually good after the catch too on screens. That'd be more of like a day 3 pick. But keep in mind someone like that, if the second wide receiver they take, kind of like a Juwan Jennings type, just in case Juwan Jennings gets hurt or so. I don't know.
yeah. No, you can sell me on the wide receiver thing because I could see them going in that direction, even though that room's full, like you said, kind of getting a guy in a year early, like we've talked about. That seems to be what they've been doing lately. So yeah, that would make sense. Maybe a guy early and another one a little bit later on because this draft does have some solid receivers in the back end of the draft as well.
Last thing I want to say about this before we move on. I'm interested to see what the loss of Wes Welker and the promotion of Leonard Hankerson does, because the position coaches do a lot of the scouting on this team. It's why there's such a synergy between the scouting department and the coaching staff. Wes Welker and Leonard Hankerson couldn't have been any different as wide receivers. Wes Welker was like 5'7", and he was a slot receiver who also returned punts. A lot of the Niners wide receivers that they acquired the last few years are kind of like him, not as small, but they're like better after the catch, and they're very versatile, and they're tough, and they block. Leonard Hankerson was 6'3". He wasn't particularly explosive. He was kind of a possession receiver. I wonder if he's going to bring back some of his skill sets to this team, because really, what's the point of bringing in a small receiver with short arms who has questionable hands with Trey Lance? What's the point? That's Travis Benjamin.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. You kind of want someone with some bear traps for hands. Otherwise, it might not work.
Yeah, especially with the way that ball comes in.
Oh, Big Daddy G 5150 5150. Big Daddy G. I probably shouldn't call anyone Big Daddy G, but he wants to be referred to as Big Daddy G, so I'll say
Daddy
it.
G.
Big Daddy G. We need a young wideout who can stretch the field and create opportunities for deep threat and O-line that can handle pass protection and the run, to give Trey the opportunity to use his skill set. Now, I'm trying to think from Kyle's perspective. Yeah, they would love a 4-3 receiver, but he's kind of like all in with this positionless versatility thing, and the 4-3 guys really can't block or play running back. He could say, look, Debo's explosive, Ayuk's explosive. I need possession guy. I need a 6'3 guy who can catch Trey Lance's, high heat when it goes to feet over his head.
Yeah, no, I think they've already got I think they have the young wideouts that can stretch the field. I just don't think they haven't had the quarterback to take advantage of it with Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk the last couple of years. So I think they have those guys. I think if they go the direction you're talking about, where it's a bigger receiver, maybe a little bit more of a blocker, kind of that kind of a player, that's going to become an offense that I think becomes more of like an 11 personnel kind of offense where you're using the receiver as your second tight end.
Yes.
And they tried. Remember, they tried to do that in 2020 prior to the injuries and stuff like that with some tight ends. So I think they can go that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And like with a deep threat for in this offense, you don't necessarily need a guy who runs a 4-2 who because you're not really throwing a lot of go routes off of just three-step drops. It's a lot of like play action, move the pocket, slow developing plays, deep over routes, double moves. I mean, Ayuk and Debo can do that just very well. Very
Yeah,
well.
no, they can stretch the field for those underneath routes for those guys for sure.
Voice ad agency says did research. Debo was 26% of the total offense in regular season, 47% in the play. Is that true? I believe it. 36% of Jimmy Garoppolo yards. Get that damn deal done. 47% in the playoffs. Does his agent know that?
I'm sure. I'm sure he does. I want to sometimes with some of the stuff I'm seeing on 49ers Twitter, I want to ask the 49ers fans if they know it.
I know it's amazing how fans can sort of convince themselves of anything when times get tough. Big Daddy G once again says so many holes to fill. Wow. With says Big Daddy G with edge rusher, corner, D line, O line. I would take an interior guard, a wideout, and edge rush to complement Bosa. There's a lot of things the Niners could do. They do have a lot of, but I do think they don't need another edge rusher. I mean, that's what Toure is here for. I think you can kind of rule that out.
They've done so much with it, right? They've built this roster right now where it looks pretty solid, at least to me. Other than maybe nickel and safety, they're pretty stout across the board everywhere. So they can go best player available or really hone in on one or two guys that they want to go after. It's going to be a fun draft to watch.